record.
Okay, we're intro. Hello, everyone. This is Rose City Recumbent Cycles. We're coming to you from our studio /shop / warehouse in beautiful Portland, Oregon. We have a sunny day, and we're happy to be here. Show number 2. We're in.
Show number 2.
I'm Jonathan Garcia, and that is Robert Holler.
Hello.
So I thought we'd start off things with kind of an assessment of our last show, which was our first kind of attempt, which was a little better than the stumble, but it was there were some moments there. Yeah. And so we've refined a couple things, right? I mean,
we're always refining.
Yes.
The refining never ends.
Right. So something that we had to do things just so people wouldn't notice them in the future.
Yes.
That's one of the things.
Yes.
Sometimes you're motivated by what people might say rather than what they actually say. So one of my things was the nostril cam. So we've fixed that. And then we also situated it so that we look like we're actually looking at each other right now. You can't tell because I don't know. Well, Robert, do we have a split screen there?
It's a split screen.
Okay, so split screen. Now we look like we're looking at each other, which is going to flow a lot better.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we are.
Yeah.
I thought it was a pretty good first show.
We take special requests for camera angles and backgrounds. Like, as the video guy, like, you don't even know where you are.
Right.
Now, people who watch the first show, like, who might see this, they might recognize where you are.
Right.
Right now.
Like in time and space?
Like in time and space.
Oh, you're talking about the background.
I'm talking about physically where you look like you are.
Because when you were mentioning about, like, we take requests, it sounded a little bit like some of those online requests where you pay money and we do things. We're not one of those places.
No. But this is a little Easter egg for people who might have seen the first one, like, because last time you were on the beach, right?
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm on the subject. So you can, I guess, request where the background would be.
Where should we be in space?
Right.
Or location? I'm in one of my favorite places.
Yeah, I can't see it. So.
I know. That's what's fun about being the video guy.
Now you can also animate us too, is that right?
Not right at the moment.
Okay.
That's in the future.
In the future.
Yeah.
I didn't just blow a secret, did I?
No.
Okay.
Who knows? Maybe we'll be cats next time.
Right.
Maybe we'll be medieval warriors. You don't know.
It could be any number of those things.
You might not know. You might be a cat next time, and I'll be myself.
I am not a cat.
You're not a cat. We are not cats. All right.
All right. So the first thing I wanted to cover was, well, part of the assessment of the last show, review, I guess. We were talking about our backgrounds, and we did get one. We got a couple comments, which was great. I mean, comment all you like. But I was going to say one of them was from Tim Zimmerman, and Tim was talking about, this is on YouTube. He says, well, first we have an intro. There's a comment on a comment.
A comment on a comment.
Comment over comment.
Nice.
Okay, so Tim says, what needs to happen to make recumbents socially acceptable? And the second part is, I wrote down some thoughts about inputs for bicycle buyer matrix, and then he lists a whole number of things: comfort, performance, cost, UCI compliance, aesthetics, quality, application, etc., etc. But these are things that, of course, Robert knows, but you may not know. I rant about this stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. So I think these are things that part of the reason we started the program was for this reason, kind of talk about each one of these things and what can be changed or looked at in a different way, or what can't be changed, or especially the social things. There's one mention of, UCI compliance. That's not going to ever change. I mean, it's
very specific to one thing. I mean, racing.
Right. And so I think there's not enough recumbent racers to make a change, number one. Number two, it
would be nice if it changed.
Yeah.
I mean,
that would be great.
It should change. But, I mean, we could talk for an hour about how their rules even sometimes ban their own type of, upright bikes can't race in races either.
Yeah, they've
Specific
kind of,
types.
Cut off their own hand to even improve the upright world. So they've had to. That's another show, though. So I'm just bringing it up and acknowledging.
Yeah.
And saying that that's a great comment, and that those are all subjects we're going to approach in one time or fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's comment over comment.
Very good. All right.
So I wanted to get back to what we were talking about in the first show. So this is officially part 2, is our backgrounds and how our origin story. And I want to include some of our outside of bikes. And I know this about you, but they may not know you were a city planner for Sumner, Washington. So tell us about that. Tell us about how that came to be and what you liked about it and why you got out of it and why you're doing something way better now.
Yeah, going on the Wayback Machine. So kind of one of my fascinations, lifelong fascinations with observing people. Why do people behave certain ways? I grew up in kind of a more rural part of Colorado at the time, as a kid, and I was always kind of fascinated with the city. What's happening in the city. We didn't go to the city that much. My aunt lived in downtown Denver and had a very urban lifestyle. We did not, as growing up. So it was this interesting, dichotomy there, this lifestyle or that lifestyle. How do people behave like me who lived out in the countryside versus like how people who, like, I always imagined, like, what do kids do who live in urban spaces, or, especially when I started riding bikes, like, where do they ride? Like, if, when we'd be downtown and there was all these cars everywhere and I'd see people riding bikes, I was like, what is that like and how? And that always fascinated me. So fast forward through lots of different careers, I ended up in the architecture program at University of Washington. I decided relatively quickly that I didn't necessarily want to do architecture, but I discovered a program called Community and Environmental Planning, and I pursued that as an urban planning focus and also cultural geography, the study of people and places, and how that just led me to eventually, seeking an internship at Sumner and becoming a city planner there. Which had a lot to do with not just approving permits for fences and garages, but also really being an advocate for the community. And how does that inform what a place is like through planning? Because that's an important thing. Because, as a city planner, you're kind of like, okay, well, I'm working on these plans, or developers or people who live in a place have plans, and what happens not just impacts the things that are there today, but into the future, like long after I'm gone, or long after other people who have moved in and moved out, or a whole nother generation comes in, but what was built in the town exists and stays.
You're planning for the future, and that's kind of how it ties in with how the skills of what you do now, what we do, is planning ahead for recumbents, because part of it is we want to know, or we want to help lay the groundwork for something 20 years from now.
Oh yeah, and
right.
And as a city planner, that was always an interesting part of the conversation. So, like, in terms of, say, cycling, how do you do an area plan for a city or a neighborhood? And you have to accommodate things like pedestrians and bicycles.
What physical things can you do to create the flow or to create a happening there?
Yeah, like,
right.
As a cyclist, and when I was urban planner is when I started riding bikes again and getting into recumbent bikes in particular. And how does a bike function in this place? And if it doesn't, then why not? And what can we do to fix it? And as everybody who's listening to or seeing the show knows, bike infrastructure, or getting more bike infrastructure, is a constant uphill battle.
Right.
I used to think of it as pushing rope uphill, because it doesn't, everybody views it as a cost, like, well, we don't get anything at a return. Like, we don't, if we add bike lanes, we are taking away
Something
from
else.
something else. We're not gaining something, but the benefit is there. So like, my job as a planner and thinking of things like pedestrian access and cycling access and all that, it went all the way back to me as a kid. It's kind of like, oh, well, if I came to my aunt's house with a bicycle, can I go anywhere?
Right.
That's important. And it's important for kids, or it's important, as we know now, for adults who are wanting to commute or just recreate, And so those are interesting things. I mean, I ultimately got out of it because I kind of pursued a different avenue in the commercial world. We could talk about that a different time.
Yeah.
But I view that as good times for me in a career, because I feel like my imprint was left on a community, in a responsible way.
Right. You can go back and you can see the changes, or I approve that. I helped develop that area and whatnot. So that's a positive thing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I guess what I'm leaning towards, or what I'm implying, is it also helps in what you do now and how you plan now. And I think that's the approach that we take. I get accused a lot of times of not liking the old bikes, or not liking something about, because 20 years have gone by and nothing's happened in the recumbent world. And I'm speaking in a general sense, so before I'm attacked, I'm saying compared to the upright world.
Yes.
So part of our plan as recumbent shop owners and whatever else we're involved with, designers, et cetera, is to bring the quality of recumbents up to the upright level and set a new standard.
Yeah.
Right? And the standard has to move forward for it's a planning, it's a community plan.
It is a plan.
Right?
It is kind of thinking about taking into account the future in the present.
Right.
Like,
as much as you can.
As much as you can, because these things are not necessarily just being built right now for today. How
Right.
are they going to last? How are they going to function in the future?
And the natural human instinct is to grab onto the old stuff because it's familiar.
Oh yeah.
Just like cars or TVs
Definitely.
or whatever you're talking about. In recumbents, they've held on a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm a part of that day. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
When I speak like that, I'm also talking about me. I love my Rans Force 5s. We talk about this every day.
Yeah. Or your gray ghost.
Yeah. Or my 34-year-old Easy Racer. Okay. So I love the old bikes too.
Yeah.
But I've also studied, and in those bikes, I've had to do so much work. It's part of why I became a designer, is because all the work I had to go into to change them, to bring them up to snuff.
Yeah.
And they're still not what could be done.
Oh no. But let's kind of segue into that a little bit. So
Yeah.
kind of your time, as you've talked a lot, kind of at Gateway Bikes,
Yeah.
for example, kind of working with tandems and tri-bikes. And this is not a recumbent specific thing, but they're informative. Those experiences are
Oh, yeah. Well,
informative.
I can carry through or at least describe what I learned from those experiences. So Gateway Bikes was here in Portland, Oregon. It was out on Halsey, so it was a little bit in the Gateway district. So neighborhood of Portland, but kind of out on the suburbs. But it was a triathlete-specific shop. So we sold most of the brands of tri-bikes at that time. We were the second Cervelo dealer in the U.S., and we were one of the best-selling ones. But we were also a tandem dealer. And so we carried Comotion and Burley and Santana and Da Vinci. And so I got to know both of those cultures really well, the culture of the triathlete and the culture of tandem buyers.
Mm-hmm.
And before and after the sale, etc., physically working on them. But I've always been a salesman and a mechanic. I consider myself a mechanic first, and I just happen to be pretty good at selling too. But that's a byproduct to knowing the bike or trike or whatever it is.
What it is.
Yeah. I didn't never go out just being a salesman. I don't even like that term. But the point I'm trying to make is so we carried all these tandems, and we were the second largest tandem dealer in the U.S. at that time. And this was 15 years ago. I did two tours of duty there. So I think I spent about 7 years there and worked for two different owners. But the culture of the tandem, of course, is usually couples, obviously, but they want to do something together. They want to do something that maybe one is a really good cyclist and one is not, or they can both be good cyclists. But the funny thing, or I guess the undertone, was that we called them divorce bikes a lot of times, and that was a joke, but it was sometimes true, where people would come in and it's a last ditch effort to save their relationship, right? And
doesn't sound always like a good idea.
No, it's not, because you have to really get along to be tandem riders.
Yes.
Right? There has to be one of you.
There's a lot of trust involved there.
There's trust, and there's just differences in how people, like, when they stop and how they stop, when they stop pedaling. I mean, when you shift.
How fast somebody wants to go.
Right, how fast someone wants to go. And there has to be, in a relationship like this, one has to let go. Like, there has to be, and it's a trust thing.
Yeah.
So couples that really get along and don't have any trust issues are really good on a tandem, or they know right away, well, this is going to work. And that's they get on it, they ride it, and they go, this isn't going to work. And that's a sign of maturity. Sure. Right? Like, it's a sign. We know this isn't going to work for us. We love each other too much to get on this machine.
Yeah.
Right? But then we have the other ones that are trying to save things. And sure enough, 3 weeks later, a month later, it's like, hey, usually the husband would call us, or soon to be ex-husband. He would call us and say, hey, man, that Santana I bought from you for $7,000 or whatever, because they were very expensive bikes.
Oh, yeah.
He said, can I sell it back to you, or can I consign it? And so that's why it got the moniker, divorce bikes. Now, other times we would have couples that loved it and traveled all over the world and all over the U.S. and, all the things. So I learned a lot about relationships and how they work from tandems.
Tandems, like you could spy a mile away. Like,
yes. Let's test the relationship. Let's put you on a tandem.
Yeah.
Right?
We're going to see how well this is going to last.
And so, and mechanically, in the kind of the mechanic world, under the technology, Santana was doing some great things with different types of tubing. They started to use carbon tubes. They used titanium lug tubes. They used every combination you could think of. So I got to test and see the same kind of platform in different materials.
Nice.
And so, and then on the tri side, which I'm going long, I can tell, but on the tri side of things, that was more about the open-mindedness of triathletes. Mm-hmm. I learned that they're the most open to say, oh, well, will that make me go faster? Right? And you say, yeah, those wheels will make you go faster. They would buy it.
Yeah.
Like, then it was the infancy of aerodynamics, right? But the main thing I learned about them was learning how to fit a person to a bike. So I developed a lot of techniques on how to fit. There's a lot of different fit techniques for triathletes, and they, of course, use lasers and mirrors and smoke and mirrors now.
Smoke and mirrors.
They're more magicians than fitters.
Yeah.
But what I learned was there's more than one way to do it, and of course, a person's fit changes as their flexibility changes, improves, or goes the other direction. But in any case, that's kind of what I want to bring to the recumbent world myself personally, is like
the fit. Yeah, the fit is an important thing that gets overlooked.
It gets overlooked, and it's also more specific. People don't realize this. It's more specific than it is even in the upright world, because in the upright world, you can
get close and you'll be okay.
Yeah, you'll be okay.
And they're also more transferable bike to bike.
Right.
I mean, a fit on one type upright is pretty close to a fit on another type of bike, but a fit on different recumbents is different.
Yeah, the variables of the seat relationship to the crank, number one, and the ability to recline the seat. Well, those are two more variables that, in general, an upright bike doesn't have.
Yeah.
Right? So you can get away with a bike too small. You can get away with a bike a little bit too big. But in recumbents, you can't technically do that if you want to get the most out of a recumbent.
True.
So we'll cover that later. But I wanted to ask you.
Uh-huh.
We're switching switching characters
gear
here.
change. You have a
gear
you need-
change.
You need a gear change sound effect.
I know. Right. We need because we're turning into this wait, no one's paying attention anymore. So now we talk about Robert.
Oh, yeah. Is that like wah wah?
And then they're like, all right.
I like the cutoff.
Yeah. You get that much applause.
Yes.
So I know this, of course, but I want everyone to kind of understand what your role is with Cruise Bike. We talked a little bit about how it started and how no one was really willing to take them on initially, at least down on the dealer level.
Yeah.
And how you got involved and what is your role now with them?
Well, for me, I mean, I really view my main role in recumbency is kind of like a title of product and customer experience manager for Cruise Bike. And as everybody knows, like how awesome cruise bikes are, and that's because of that evolution and all of the type of work that we are doing at Cruise Bike from promotion and the website and the type of incredible customer feedback that we get.
Right.
And that then gets turned around into emails that go out that people see, which are real experiences, from customers.
As a semi-outsider, I would say that they're the closest fundamentally to an upright as far as marketing, as far as the fit and finish of the bike. Yeah. All these little elements that we're talking about, like planning this recumbent planning commission or whatever you want to call it, is Cruise Bike does the closest job to that in the current market.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, that's kind of, for Cruise Bike, that's kind of the role, like kind of the advocacy and the organization and the quality and the planning and the marketing and the customer outreach and the customer service and all those things kind of come together, in our Cruise Bike really. And I mean, it's a huge part of me. I mean, it's like, hours and hours and hours of my every day.
It never stops.
It never stops, which is okay though, because I like it.
Yeah.
And I really view it as kind of that culmination of lots of my experiences.
Like I think of myself as a cyclist, not as a recumbent rider, because I spent so much time as a BMX freestyle guy, right? And I spent so much time as a mountain bike racer, et cetera, et cetera. I think of myself as a cyclist.
Yeah.
And we own a recumbent store and we're involved with recumbents. I love recumbents, everything about them. Yeah. I'm not going back.
Yeah, you're not going back to the old upright.
But I'm still a cyclist.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because I want to think about it as cycling rather than just automatically putting myself in the recumbent. We're trying to change this attitude that not that recumbents have about themselves necessarily, but more what the outside world thinks about recumbents. What I think the general push is that we want to bring that level up.
Yeah.
Right. So the level, actually fewer working designs across the board. Like it doesn't matter what the brand.
Oh yeah. And that's more like what, what happens in the upright world.
Right.
We're not taking a, shotgun approach at Cruise Bike. We're focusing.
Right.
And making that kind of towards the future plan, like kind of toward what is the direction of this model or this thing, How
it's a conscious approach towards, it's not a shot in the dark. And that's one of the things that...
It's that innovation, purposeful innovation.
Yes. Yeah. And it's one of the things we talk about a lot because as I know some of these people, manufacturer, designers along the way, I've met and talked with them and I'm friends with them and I love them. There were a lot of shots in the dark in recumbents. And not everyone knows this, right? And I only know it because I've interviewed them or I've analyzed these bikes. I've autopsied these bikes inside and out. And so I know what makes them tick. And I know we can do better. And that's why I'm saying, not me personally, I'm gonna hopefully help. But I'm saying as a collective, we can do better. So as that And I think that's where Cruise Bike comes into the picture, or the story is that Cruise Bike has set a standard. And that standard says, okay, we're inching our way closer to this ultimate goal.
Of this ideal.
It's a better way to put it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important thing to bring out.
Yeah. Well, and kind of, I know, talking about that, you've talked about stories of, getting away from the ideal, like in terms of things that your experience kind of when you were a tech rep at Felt.
Yeah. So the segue into Felt. So 2011 through 2012, I worked for Felt Bicycles. It was a tech rep job, so technical representative. So I worked for the company. I was not a sales rep. Sales reps were independents generally. So I worked for Felt. There were only 4 tech reps. So it was a high competition. I mean, we had 200 applicants for my job. So there was 4 of us, and they basically divided the country into, 4 quarters. And I had the Pacific Northwest. I had part of California. I had slightly into Colorado, which I never got into Colorado because someone else lived there, so they got that part. So in any case, I got to see behind the curtain in terms of just on a personal level, but also in a corporate level of what's it like in the bike industry. Mm-hmm. And not all of it was pretty. Mm-hmm. And some of it was great. I mean, some of the people I met were awesome, right? And awesome at what they do and dedicated and meaning well. But I mentioned it in the last show about, it's a boys club for sure. And no one could know anything more than that club, mm-hmm. right? So there was a lot of that going on. The most interesting thing, the positive thing I took from it was I visited, I think, over 100 bike shops in that year. So I had a truck, I had a Sprinter van, the big, tall Sprinter with a packed. And I had a 24-foot trailer. So I had 60 to 80 bikes, I think. I mean, we wouldn't always carry that many, but we could carry that many. And so we would travel. My job was to go to trade shows. It was to go to individual bike shops and go in and just listen to the owners would talk to me about, what they didn't like about the brand or what they liked about the brand. And, a lot of stuff that I didn't have control over, but I was just the receiver of the message. And then I would say to Felt, I would do the reports to Felt and say, well, this is what people are leaning towards, or this is what people like or dislike. But what I really learned was about the culture of all the different bike shops that I walked into across the country, mm-hmm. right? And this was in a year's time. So I was going, every day I'd visit 2 or 3. I mean, they wanted you to do more. It's like there's no way you could drive for 8 hours and go to 3 bike shops. Yeah. Let me just say that. So I drove just under 60,000 miles that year. And it was an insane pace. So never ending. But again, what I learned was the culture of each bike shop, and I could just sense it walking through the door, and just how the interaction between the mechanics and the one thing in which I brought, and sometimes when I talk to Cruise Bike about this, the people that have a lot of influence in this world are the mechanics, right? Yeah. So the mechanics control, after the salesperson sells the bike or trike or whatever it is, upright bike, they are the ones that can make or break someone's view of a bike. And that's why it's so, I'm bringing it back to recumbents in this way.
Sure.
And this is where I learned it, was that you have to make it easy for that mechanic to say, yeah, I like that brand.
I
like that brand, even though it's a recumbent, mm-hmm. Quotations.
Yeah.
But I like that brand because I can do XYZ on it.
Yeah.
I can put this derailleur on it. And that's kind of the push we're putting, I'm telling you where I learned some of this stuff from.
Sure.
It's from these interviews with each one. I had to do these. The iPad had just come, and we got these iPads. We thought we were so high tech. And we had these formats where we'd have to fill out all these questions from all these people.
Like questionnaires?
Questionnaires. But I'd hang around. I mean, these guys, if I had to stay overnight or I had a town, I didn't have to go very far, I'd hang out with these guys.
Sure, why not?
Right? And so I learned a lot about the industry from that perspective. And then I'd go back and report. The main offices are in Irvine, California. And I'd go back and I knew Jim Felt really well. He was one of the owners, and Jim and I got along fabulously. Like, I loved working with Jim Felt. He was a sharp guy. He helped develop some of the Easton aluminum. He worked for Easton Aluminum, and he helped develop the tubing for tri-bikes. And he was a pioneer in a lot of early tri-aero studies. And, he was just a good mechanic. He was a Honda mechanic. He did all, I don't know if it was Yamaha too, but I know he worked for Honda way back. And then he made bikes for Easton, or using Easton tubing under his name. And then he teamed up with a couple guys from GT Bicycles when they went out of business. So that's how Felt was born. So if you notice any similarities between the Felt logo and the GT Bicycles logo, that's why. So they have the same approach.
Gotcha.
Right? And so I don't regret working for them, but it was a tough gig.
God.
I think that's a good place to end it, I guess. Yeah.
We need comments.
Yeah, we need comments.
So we can do the
comment over comment.
Comment of a comment.
Yeah.
I like that section.
Yeah, I guess we need some sort of logo.
Yes.
Right? Because I love using this.
That's your favorite so far?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got it a rant. See, I could go hours on this.
Hopefully somebody knows where you are physically in time and space, because you don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know where I am. I know where you are.
Anyway, thanks for sticking around, everyone. Yeah. And that's the close of part 2. As you can see, there's rambling can happen.
Rambling can happen. Now is our outro, do we have the groovy outro?
Not yet.
We don't have a groovy outro?
Well, I have the same as the intro right now.
Oh, okay. Well, that'll work.
Yeah. So here we go.
All right.
The outro. Thanks for listening, everyone.
The rocking outro.
Yeah, it's a little... The other one's going to be mellow.
Yes, the other one's a mellow outro. This is a rocking outro.
Sounds a lot like the beginning.
Yes. It's the beginning and the end. It's a circle. All right.
All right.